Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Buddhism Talks. And for this episode, I struggled a little bit with the topic because there's a lot of great stuff that I can talk about that is inspiring no matter what your practice is, no matter what your background is, whether it's the philosophy of Buddhism in terms of health, relationships, creating lasting peace, education, any of those things. However, I thought for the second one, I would just dive right into the aspect of the practice that might be the most challenging for some, and it is this idea of chanting, and is the fact that we chant the phrase Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And so I wore my sweatshirt, a hoodie actually, that my daughter made for me. It says Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's the chant that we chant in this practice. So first of all, I want to talk about why chant. Like, why would anybody do this? And also, what does the chant mean, and why this chant, not some other one? And also, I really wanted to talk about the creative power of chanting. This creative power piece is something that doesn't matter if you've been chanting 1 week or 40 years. I think we all need a reminder and a refresh of what it is that we're doing and why it is so crucial to do in this world at this time. So, before we get into those key aspects, I wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing how I started to practice, because I find those stories are often really interesting. Every single Buddhist that you meet is going to have a very different personal story. So sometimes people had an interest in Eastern philosophies, and other times a guy just had a crush on a girl who happened to be a Buddhist. So the stories are very different. How people learned of it, how they started, it's about as unique as each person is. So I thought I would spend a few minutes talking about how I started. About 40 years ago, I was living in London, England, and I started going out with this guy who was in a band. And I think within the first couple of weeks or so, there's one night we were going out and he said, "Oh, just hang on a minute. I just got to chant right now before we go out." And I cannot express the feeling fully that I had. My heart sank. I was just like, "Oh no," right? I just thought it was so weird. But then I thought, "Oh, he's really cute. It's okay. I can get past the chanting." Luckily, he was cute anyway. So, anyway, that was my first reaction, which is the reaction of probably a lot of people, where you're like, "What the heck is that?" But then as he started going out, he explained to me so much of the philosophy. And I found that everything he explained was everything that I thought anyway. This idea that we can change our destiny, that nothing is set in stone, but in order to change our destiny, we needed to exert energy. So in the same way that if a satellite wants to change orbits, it needs an extra push of energy to get to the next orbit. Part of the reasoning for the chanting as well is this summoning up of energy. So after I got over the initial shock of the chanting, he explained a little bit more about the philosophy, and it all started to make sense. And it was all things I agreed with anyway, that what you were born into was not what you were going to live for the rest of your life, that everyone had incredible hidden potential, that we were all innately creative beings, that it was really important to use our lives to create value in the world and to create a more peaceful planet. So, all of that I was on board with, except there was a lot more that I could not have come up with by myself. So, the explanations around life and death, around purpose, around consciousness, around karma, and what it actually means. I mean, that's one of the misrepresented terms in society these days, but we'll get to that on another episode. So all those other explanations I found to be valuable and fascinating, and I really enjoyed learning about all of that. However, I felt like there's no way that I was going to chant or start going to Buddhist meetings. Then after about 7 months, there came a time where I had to decide what to do next. So my choices at the time were go back to Canada, stay in London, England, or if he got deported, I could go follow him to Switzerland. All three of those options just became so overwhelming because they were all big decisions. And I just got more and more and more confused and paralyzed. It felt like I was digging a stationary hole that was getting deeper and deeper because I didn't want to step in either of those three directions. So then he said, why don't you try chanting? So at first I was like, no, that's your thing. It's got nothing to do with me. Like, keep that over there. And magically one day, so one morning I woke up and I think, well, I don't think, I know he was chanting a lot for my happiness, for me to make the right decision. And he said, do you want to chant? And to this day, I'm amazed that I said yes. For some reason, I was just like, sure, let's do this. And we sat down and he taught me how to do it, how to say Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and chant with him. So there was something in my life that really responded to this. At first I thought, oh, I must be concentrating too hard. This is weird. But I did feel something, right? So I decided to keep chanting each day. I liked it. Whatever that was that I was feeling, I really liked it. There was a strength, there was a calm, there was a clarity, and I really enjoyed the feeling that I had from it. So within the next 3 weeks, I chanted about every option and all the different things that I could be doing. And it became very clear what the right one was. So I ended up flying back to U of T, enrolled in a Bachelor of Commerce program, landing on the last day of late registration. I remember I landed Thursday night. Friday, 1 o'clock was the last day to show up and register. So I made it just in time. It wasn't just about ending up in Toronto and going back to university. I just knew from the depths of my being it was the best thing. I was so happy about it. I felt so lucky to have the clarity and to be able to take all the actions to get me back to Canada into that program. And then I thought, that was cool. I'm not going to do that every day. And so I just attribute it to like a cool little experience. However, during that time, I still kept the principles in mind, right? Like I still was aware of cause and effect. Like, what causes am I making? I was aware that my energy would influence my environment. I was aware of a lot of the principles. And eventually I started to get curious about what are the Buddhists like in Canada. So I reached out, I connected, and then I began to chant on my own terms. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, like an experiment, and see what happens. And what happened was I just felt more myself, but on a good day, when you're really solid in who you are, where things flow, where you're able to influence the situation around you. So this is when I thought, oh, this could actually be useful. So rather than waiting to feel better or waiting to feel stronger, I actually had something that I could do to regenerate. That was the beginning of me saying, I think this could be good. And the other thing that was explained to me is that when I chanted, I would have access to 4 things that we associate with enlightenment. So I wasn't interested in either being a Buddha, experiencing enlightenment, not interested in spiritual journeys or being on a mountaintop, any of that kind of stuff. So when he explained to me the qualities of an enlightened life condition, then I was interested. So the 4 qualities of Buddhahood or your enlightened nature are essentially wisdom, courage, compassion, and the bonus is life force. So those are really the 4 aspects of bringing out your enlightened nature. So why are these things so useful? So let's start with wisdom. Now, wisdom is different than intelligence. Intelligence can go either way. It can create a nuclear bomb that destroys life, or it can create technology that supports life. With wisdom comes clarity. It's the clear glasses where you can understand the forces at play and come up with a solution that creates the most value for everybody involved. So highly practical to be able to see your life clearly and the lives of others clearly. That has got to be a human superpower. So I thought, okay, wisdom's kind of good. So the next quality is courage. And it's not just braveheart courage or the kind of courage that we associate with these great figures in history. We actually need the courage to imagine our lives differently. We need courage to have big dreams. We need courage to speak out against injustice, whether it's for other people's sake or for our own sake. Everything actually begins with courage. So there's a quote from Daisaku Ikeda where he's talking about the importance of courage. And he says, you don't want to have a life where you, at the end of it, you think, oh, if only I had a little bit more courage. Maybe I could have written that book. Maybe I could have done that trip. Maybe I could have deepened that relationship if only I had a little more courage. So, courage is vital to our lives. So, the third quality is compassion. And sometimes that means compassion for other people, sometimes it's compassion for ourselves. You know, when I started practicing, I didn't think I was ever really mean to other people, so I thought I was compassionate, but then I realized actually I'm really strict on myself and very harsh to myself. So in my case, I needed to be compassionate to myself. And in other cases, depending on the situation, we need to have more compassion for another person. Sometimes we get into a challenging situation with somebody and we don't realize what they're going through. We don't realize where they're at. And so sometimes the breakthrough in a relationship or even in a work situation is going to come, is going to require more compassion. So those are the three main qualities. And of course, life force. You can't do anything without energy. Like if we go back to that satellite changing orbits example, we need energy. So those four qualities are in fact our superpowers as human beings. We all have them. We've all brought them out. We know what they feel like. And in fact, in today's world, there's a ton of great people encouraging us to bring these qualities out and to use them. There's great thinkers, there's great speakers, there's conferences, there's webinars, there's books. Buddhism doesn't own the truth, but it expounds it. It's a philosophy of life that explains how things work. The big bonus is that it actually comes with a practice. It's not just a theory, it's not only a philosophy, because as everybody knows, once you've read the great book or you've attended the conference or you've watched the webinar, sometimes it can be very difficult to implement some of the things that you've learned in your daily life, especially when you face a big obstacle. So you might do great for a while, but when the next challenge hits, some of the stuff that you work so hard on might just go out the window. So the beauty of having a practice and the ability to chant is that you can always access these qualities of wisdom, courage, compassion, and life force. And the focus is to show actual proof. There must be a real impact. I mean, otherwise, I have better things to do, quite frankly. If it's not real and there isn't a real impact, why would anybody do this? So, when I did this presentation a couple of years ago, the night before, I thought, oh, I wonder if there's any science on any of this. So, I went into PubMed, I typed in chanting, and two studies popped up. Not particularly strong, but there were two lines that I thought were interesting. In the very first one, they conclude that they believe that meditation and prayer are going to have different psychotherapeutic effects than chanting. So I thought, oh, probably makes sense, but that's what they were looking at. Does meditation and prayer have a different psychotherapeutic effect than chanting does? So that's something to think about. The other study was essentially looking at how chanting can help with emotional regulation. And I don't know about you, but I think the more emotional regulation we can have in the world, the better. So the first line of the introduction says that during hard times, religious chanting and praying is widely practiced to cope with negative or stressful emotions. So this study is clearly done in another country because I don't think we do a lot of that in Canada. Um, they used MRI scans and they were looking at the ability of chanting to counterbalance fear, to help with emotional regulation, and as a way of diminishing the effects of negative stimuli. So, for example, if there's things in the environment that induce trauma or anxiety or fear, they were looking at the ability of chanting to diminish the effects on a person's life. So that's all there was. But studies on singing, there was a lot more on that. And what was interesting what was interesting for me is singing is actually quite a bit like chanting. They both involve your voice. They both involve putting your heart into a vocal expression. They both include an influence of the environment. When you think of singing, it can transform mood and energy, not only for oneself, but also in an environment. So if we look at the studies on singing, they basically talked about that singing alone can increase endorphins, the feel good hormones. Singing in a group increases oxytocin, another great hormone. Breathing and sitting straight improves lung and heart function. And breathing from the abdomen can help with calmness, relaxation, circulation, and warm extremities. So the end conclusion is that you're going to have less stress and anxiety if you sing regularly, but also if you chant regularly. So the end result for both singing and chanting is at the end of it, there will be less stress and anxiety. And who doesn't want that? So I just want to add a few short points on what I like about it. Number one, I'm able to generate my own happiness that's not dependent on anything around me. And that is an incredible benefit. Number two, it gives a physical energy and sound to the invisible things that are in my heart. My dreams, goals, prayers suddenly have a physical influence in the world rather than being held quietly inside here. So, number three gives me a daily discipline that puts my life in rhythm with everything around me. So, it creates time and space for my own life to breathe. It's like having your own personal studio where you can stop, reflect, ponder, and create a new vision moving forward. It's a real luxury with how busy everything is these days. So those are just a few reasons why you might want to try chanting. So next I want to cover why this chant. And as you'll notice, I've just been joined by my cat Merlin, who I'm often wearing. You know, in the Oscars they say, "Who are you wearing?" And I'm always wearing Merlin. I'm always wearing black, and I always take a little piece of Merlin everywhere I go. So he's very happy. This is him. He's a big cat. So he's going to, you're going to hear purring on the microphone. So now I want to say a little bit about why this chant. Why not Om? Why don't we chant the name of a Buddha? Why don't we chant banana, banana, banana? Wouldn't chanting that have the same effect? Wouldn't there be a positive effect? I just want to remind everybody that when you have Chinese characters or Japanese characters, there's layers of meaning in each character. So when you say myoho or renge or kyo, there's layers of meaning in those terms. So myoho, first of all, means mystic law. It also refers to the constant cycle of life and death. It refers to the manifest physical seen aspects of life and also the unseen and unfathomable. It's basically saying life is made of all of those dimensions. And it also has the character Myo as part of it. Myo is incredibly important and profound. And what Myo refers to is the ability to revive ourselves, to open a new way forward, to influence our environment, and to already be perfectly endowed, which means that at our core, we're made of the same holistic completeness, equilibrium that the universe has. So that's Myo. And on a practical level, you would always want to be able to revive dreams, revive your sense of self, revitalize in general. And in terms of open, that refers to the fact that your life has the ability to influence your environment and open a new way forward. And to be perfectly endowed is simply an opportunity to really treasure your own life, respect your own life, and recognize its inherent worth. So that's Myoho. Renge means cause and effect, which essentially everything runs on cause and effect, basic principle of science. It also refers to the lotus flower. And the incredible thing about the lotus flower is that it grows in mud. And that is a symbol for the fact that even though our lives look impure, at the core of our life, we have this enlightened nature. So according to Buddhism, we are fundamentally pure, but we have layers of stuff on top, either confusion, delusion, karma, all those things. So it basically means that in the midst of struggles, in the midst of challenges, we can bring out that pure life force of Buddhahood. And the cool thing about the lotus flower is that it's able to clean itself from the inside. So that's why they're always so white. There might be frogs jumping in the pond, there could be rainstorms, but the lotus flower cleans itself from the inside. And that's also a metaphor for our life. You know, stuff comes at us. Sometimes we throw the stuff at ourselves. We throw the dirt on ourselves. We don't have to need anybody else. But with our practice, we can clean ourselves from the inside. And the last thing it refers to is the simultaneity of cause and effect. So yes, there's cause and effect, but if you were to think about every single cause that you ever made in this lifetime or any other lifetime, and if you had to worry about changing the effects from those causes, that would be an incredibly overwhelming task to take on. However, if you understand that what really counts is the cause that you're making now, you don't have to focus on the past, but from this moment on, you can make new causes and thereby create new effects and a new version of your life. And that's really all you need to focus on is the present. And kyo refers to several things. So it refers to sound and vibration. So everything is made of vibration, and sound is a way of transmitting energy and affecting vibration. It also means sutra or teaching, and that refers to the fact that we all learn from someone or something. So this aspect of a seeking mind, of continually learning, of connection with great teachers, that is an also very important aspect of human life. So the third meaning of kyo is interconnectedness, and Buddhism explains that we are all much more connected than we think, both to the people around us and to our environment. So when you put it together, Myoho Renge Kyo, it actually expresses a lot of the eternal principles of life. This idea of the cycle of life and death, the fact that there is physical realms and profound, unfathomable realms. And then there is the idea of Myo, the ability to revive, the ability to open. And then there's this idea of cause and effect, which is a basic law of physics. Then you've got sound, vibration, teaching, interconnectedness. So Myoho Renge Kyo is meant to be an expression of life itself. So Nam is where you come in. Nam means I devote. That's where it's like, I devote my life to life. Technically, we use the term Myoho Renge Kyo, but it's really life itself. It's the eternal flow of life itself. So Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is the name, it's the sound, it's the vibration of our enlightened nature and the fundamental law that underlies the universe, if you can believe that. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. What really matters is if it works, and whether if you chant this phrase, there will be an effect, right? So that's the most important part. So the other aspect of this is that we don't chant a Buddha's name. We actually chant what the Buddhas chant. We actually chant the law itself. And I find that to be a really profound aspect of this practice. So the most important thing in all of this is if it works, right? When you put it to the test. Otherwise, I might as well be telling you fairy tales. So the next important thing to understand is the difference between prayer to an outside force and a prayer that brings out an inside force. And that inside force is connected to the outside force, if that doesn't make your head spin. So before I say anything further, I have a couple of quotes that kind of express the dimensions of Buddhist prayer, and I call it active prayer. So the first one is, prayers are neither light dreams nor vague wishes. They should be firm pledges of determination. Prayers made with such strong resolve invite clear results. Prayer entails an intense challenge to believe in yourself and to stop diminishing who you are. To belittle yourself is to defile Buddhism and the Buddha within your own life. Prayer is an attempt to merge the inner workings of our life with the rhythm of the universe. Prayer is the ability to create something from nothing, the act of transforming negative to positive. So you can see that this kind of prayer is an inherently creative, dynamic process. It's not an exercise of separating oneself from reality, but rather galvanizing oneself to fully engage in life, to fully live. So the first quote talked about determination. It's about decisions, deciding how things are going to go. And often the process of chanting is going from a place of, I don't know what to do, or I don't like this situation, or I wish it could be different. So it starts with wishes, hopes, discomfort, maybe sometimes, or not. Maybe everything's fine. Maybe there's nothing wrong at all. And you simply want to experience more. So prayer about a difficult situation can often begin with, I wish it was different. It'd be so nice. It would be so nice if it was different. And then as you start to build an image of what you actually would like to live and experience, it turns into, wouldn't it be nice? That would be nice. Oh my gosh, that'd be so great. And as you deepen your prayer and you deepen your vision of what's possible. There is a moment in that process where you just decide that it is a done deal and this is going to happen and that's it. And at that moment is when reality is going to start responding to the decision that you've made. So prayer can start from a place of vague wishes, confusion, discomfort, but eventually it moves into a determination, and then it becomes an absolute decision. So, based on these quotes, you can see that prayer, in fact, is a creative process. It's a dynamic process. It is a transformative process where you might begin in one life state when you sit down to chant. It might even be a feeling of hopelessness. It might be just a feeling of fatigue. It could be you could be in any kind of a condition when you sit down to chant. But from the beginning to the end, it is a process of putting your life in rhythm with the universe, of making determinations, making it very clear about the value you want to create with your life. And as it says at the end here, you're able to create something from nothing and transform negative to positive. So that's the creative power of chanting. So the last thing I'm going to do is basically teach you how to chant if you want to try it. So it's very simple. Again, the phrase is Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo. The rhythm is very important, right? It's not Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo, right? And it's not Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo, stop. Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo, stop. It's not that. It's Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo, Nam Yo Ho. It's that constant flow. You can hear it and you can feel it. And that's what you're connecting to, is that constant eternal flow at the base of your life. Now, in terms of speed and volume, not so important, depends on the person. Some people are quieter, some people are louder. So in terms of speed of chanting, some people chant slower and some people chant a lot faster. Now, the image that's recommended is that of a galloping horse, right? When you think of a galloping horse, right? Nam yoho renge go, nam yoho renge go, nam yoho renge go, nam yoho renge go. That's a gallop, right? And my husband always says, yeah, you don't want to be a plowing horse, like a horse in the field. It's like dragging all this baggage, in this big heavy cart of karma on its back, and it's like nam yo ho renge go. Like, you don't want to be that horse, right? You want to be the galloping horse. So whether it's very fast or on the slower end, it's the gallop piece that's important, right? And sometimes that can change from country to country. Like, I remember visiting Italy, and I was in a room of many Italians chanting, and it was so fast. And then I remember talking to one of the people. They're like, yeah, because we think it should be like a cappuccino in the morning, like it wakes you up, right? So there they were chanting like Nam Yoho Renge Go, Nam Yoho Renge Go, Nam Yoho Renge Go, like very quickly, right? So you will hear different speeds and different volumes, and that is not the most important thing, but the rhythm is, and the clarity of the sound is. So that's what you need to focus on. I'm going to put links to 2 videos below. One is called How to Chant. The other one is the sound of chanting that you can put on and chant along with it. That's okay when you're learning how to chant, but really when you chant, you should really listen to the sound of your own voice, because that is the sound of you as a Buddha. Right? The other thing is, like, where do you chant? Well, you find a place in your home that has a blank wall in front of it, or you look out to nature. So it's important. We don't chant to idols or photos or any of that kind of stuff. So we really want to have a clear, clean space that you're facing when you're chanting, rather than something that's affected by other imagery, other energy. So blank wall, or look out the window into nature, and really think of it as, this is the place that I go to in my house to appreciate my life, to revitalize my life, and to move forward, right? Because Nam Myoho Renge Kyo means to advance. It means to grow. It means to move forward, right? So you want to have a place in the home where it's dedicated to your life. It's dedicated to your growth, your happiness, your creativity. So that's kind of like how to chant if you wanted to try it out for the next little while. Ultimately, you're going to want to connect to a Buddhist group in your area, right? So you can go to Soka Global, you can go to Soka Gakkai organization in your country, like Google it, and connect with people. Because in the same way that we weren't really meant to live completely isolated and alone, we're not really meant to practice alone either. We need to learn from other people. And that is what the meetings of the Soka Gakkai create. They create an environment where we all learn from each other. We are all working on our own growth and development, but we have incredible support. We have constant inspiration. We have access to study. And it's really spiritual nourishment, right? That's what you get when you start to practice within a district. But practicing with other people allows you to truly practice Buddhism, not to develop your own version of Buddhism, right? If I were to practice all by myself and only study and chant, what would happen over time is I would avoid some of the aspects of the practice I don't like, or some of the principles I don't like, and practice the parts that I do like. And that's not Buddhism. That's Lydiaism, if I were to do that. So it is important to practice with other Buddhists and to, chant together, study together. But at the same time, if you're not quite ready to go practice with other people, that's okay too. The important thing is to actually try out chanting. So the people that do practice in this coming month of April, it really is an amazing time to renew our practice, set new goals, refresh our determinations, and try to live the most creative life we can in all levels. And so I would like to close this episode with one of my favorite quotes from Daisaku Ikeda, from a speech he gave at a graduation of university students. The speech was all about living a creative life and what that actually means. What became clear in that speech, that when he's talking about living a creative life, he's not only talking about people that paint and sing and act. He's talking about the fact that we are all capable of living a creative life. And if we do not allow that creative aspect of our lives to breathe, to manifest, to be turned into action, there's an aspect of us that will stagnate and it will be impossible to be happy. So actually, all of us are creative. We are all creative beings. We are born to be creative beings. So now back to Daisaku Ikeda's lecture. So I just want to read this quote. He says, "You must not for one instant give up your effort to build new lives for yourselves. Creativeness means to push open the heavy, groaning doorway to life. This is not an easy struggle. Indeed, it may be the most difficult task in the world, for opening the door to your own life is in the end more difficult than opening the door to the mysteries of the universe. But to do so is to vindicate your existence as human beings. At the same time, it makes life worth living for you. I say to you that there is no one lonelier or more unhappy than a person who does not know the pure joy of creating a life for themselves. To be human is not merely to stand erect and manifest intelligence or knowledge. To be human, in the full sense of the word, is to lead a creative life." So that's the version of life I wish for all of you, one that is continually creative and flourishing and valuable and joyful. And this is the key to creating a renaissance, is living this kind of life. So this is talking about a creative life on a personal level. And this is absolutely crucial on a global level. He also says that creativity is the most important thing we need for a peaceful planet right now. He says, in terms of finding a path toward the resolution of global issues, what is most strongly required of us is the imagination that can appreciate the present crisis as an opportunity to fundamentally transform the direction of history. By mustering the force of inner will and determination, we can convert challenges into the fuel for positive change. So this is what is going to bring about a renaissance. So I wish you a great week ahead. Let's keep aiming for that renaissance and have a very, very creative week this week. Thank you so much for listening.